CGI. Anil has had a 2-decade-long career with the technology industry in various roles around learning and development. Welcome to the session, Anil. Last but not the
Thank
least,
you.
we have on the
Thank you.
panel is Mr. Deepak Oja. Deepak is an associate director with Drop. He has more than a decade-long career with several companies. He's a graduate from Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences. So welcome to the session, Deepak.
Thank you, Saurabh.
With this, I think I'll pass on the dais to Divya to take this further.
Thank you. Our apologies to all the attendees. We still have some issues going on with our videos. But in the meanwhile, I don't want to keep us all hanging. So I'll go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen and let me know when it's visible. Can you share this? Can you share this?
It's visible, Divya.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Visible.
So welcome everybody for attending this session. Some of you may have heard me prior to this webinar about the competency standards, but I wanted to just go over some of these things, the basic things, what these standards are, what do they mean to you, and how you can leverage them. So simply put, if you just look at competency standards, nothing but the skills required to perform a job, right? For doing any kind of job, you need skill set. And that's what the competency framework does. It defines the skills required that you can perform your job, tells you exactly what are the prerequisites you need, what are kind of tools you will need, what kind of programming languages you need. So it gives you a complete picture of the skills you need. What is our vision? Our vision is to create a common language across academia, industry, and government to drive talent transformation at scale for these emerging technologies. Right? And how can you achieve that? By competency standards, by this competency framework. So I'm gonna, just very high level cover the slides, but I want to do more of a storytelling and share with you what my experience has been in developing these standards. So just to get the formal process out, the way we do this is NASSCOM does not create these standards in isolation. We work very closely with our industry partners in creating these standards. So we typically have over 20 to 30 organizations who are part of these development of this qualification packs standard or competency framework. We work with the research partners enough, and Deepak is here, so he'll shed some more light on how we get into the details of defining this competency framework. So we work together with a research partner, with industry work group, and identify the skill sets required for a particular technology. Okay. After the industry validates those competencies, then we get into the formal process with the government of getting it approved. So there's two levels of approval that we work with the government. One is through NSTC, that's called QRC approval. And that's when the standards actually become official standards for the government. And the second step is our NSQC approval by MHRD, NSQC team. And that's when they are eligible for the government incentive schemes. So it's a very, very streamlined process and a very elaborate process to ensure that we are doing the right thing. Industry validation is a key. Okay, so why does it matter? Why does it matter? What are the industry standards? How does industry care? Sorry, my screen is frozen. Let me, my apologies. Can you guys, is the screen visible again?
Not yet, Divya. Not yet, Divya.
Okay, so my bad screen. Okay.
Also, Divya, you can turn on the video now.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Anu. So I'll go in the presentation mode and start the video. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, we can see you. We can see the video.
All right, so let me do the screen share. Okay. All right. So, so before I go into what my journey has been in developing these standards, just to let you know what we have completed so far is we have developed the standards for AI, big data, cloud computing, cybersecurity, IoT, web and mobile development, RPA, IT marketing, and blockchain. All these technologies that I just listed out, we have gone through the process of getting it approved through the government, and we're working on 3D printing and AR/VR right now. Now, why do we call these flexible, modular, stackable? How can industry actually use these? So what I'm going to do is just do the storytelling of my experience, right? So when I came in, I come from industry. I had zero background of creating these competency standards. And honestly, I'm like, why does industry care? Why do they want to be prescribed what they need to do to create this common language? Everybody has their own L&D team, they have their own requirements. So why does it matter? So I came with the same thing and I was like, why should I do this? So the very first group I had was AI, big data, and the very first learning right from the beginning, and Deepak chime in, the first experience we heard was, don't worry about these job roles. I mean, if I am describing a data analytics person, engineer, for a Wipro, it would be a different meaning. The same job role would have a completely different meaning if you're in a small, medium business or in a startup, right? So defining a job role, the first learning was don't be prescriptive on a job role. Yes, we have to do it for the government, we will do that. But for industry, let's not worry about creating a job role. That's okay, that was the learning number one. The narrative has to change. Narrative has to be competency, skills, and not the job role. The second learning we had was industry said, okay, let's also categorize these as some of the job families. Typically, if you look at your AI, big data, or cloud computing, anyway, you will see that typically you will categorize these jobs in engineering or strategy or architecture. So we introduced the concept of job categories or job families. That was the second thing. And the third thing that we focused on was creating the competency skills that talks the language of industry. And then we said, what we create and how you use it is up to you. We have created a list of competencies. Now, how you use it is really up to you. So I want to give you an example of what I mean by modular and stackable. But before that, I also want to let you know that as part of these technologies, we have also developed the foundation curriculum for each of these technologies, which is really the ground that we want to start off with for a new learner, right? I come from technology, but I don't know all these data technologies, right? I know cloud, I know IoT, but I'm new to AI, big data. So for me to start off and say, okay, I have technical background, but I want to understand the basics of a technology. So for that purpose, we have created this foundation curriculums for each technology, again, in collaboration with industry. These courses curriculums are about typically 40 to 60 hours. They include both theoretical and hands-on experience. And like I said, they're developed for each of these technologies. That was one thing we did. The industry came together and said, let's define some basic curriculum requirement for foundation level, as a stepping stone for somebody to get qualified deeper into their competencies and for the job role. Now, when I was talking about the flexibility and modularity of different job roles, I'll take an example of cloud. In the case of cloud, the group came together and they said, okay, we have identified 6 different job categories. Under each job category, they came up with different technical competencies and said, these are the kind of tasks somebody needs to do. And then we combine them and say, okay, let's create different job roles. Now, the industry, we said, ignore this part, ignore the right-hand side completely. Only stick to technical competencies. So what does that mean? So under strategy, let's say we define these 4 different technical competencies. Now it's up to an industry how they want to combine these. Do they want to combine all these 4 competencies as one job role? They can do that. They want to split it in different job roles? They can do that. They can even go to different job categories, look at the technical competencies defined there, combine the 2 and create their own job role. So it's very flexible and modular. And sometimes you will notice that, now cloud spans across multiple technologies. When you're talking AI, also cloud has a component in that. When you talk of IoT, again, cloud has a component in that. Now, if you have any job roles in IoT, but the cloud is integral part of that solution, you can again look at these competencies and use it as part of your framework. So that's what industry said, that leave at the level of competencies, at the framework of defining these skill sets, and we will use them as we want to and combine them and use as job roles. That was one big learning, and how this became really powerful. As I moved on from AI, big data, and we got into cloud and we got into IoT, Deepak will share with you the stories where people would actually come back and say, no, don't hurry us up. Give us all the time. We are doing this for the nation. We want to do this right. So the passion that I saw in the people in the entire industry coming together and creating a standard that can talk the common language of the entire industry was probably the most thrilling part of developing these. And what I want to share with you also is, when I say we're talking the industry language, at NASSCOM, we also have an e-learning platform, online platform called Future Skills. And what we do there is we actually are mapping the courses aligned to the curriculums. So we go to all our OEMs, we talk to them and say, hey, what are your most popular courses? Look, so as an example, AZ500, right? This is one of the certification programs of Microsoft. This is as is running program, right? No modification, nothing. Their as is running program actually mapped to 5 different competency skills in the cloud. So, this verifies that what we are developing is actually talking the industry language. This is a certification program completely aligned to our competency framework with no changes, nothing. And this is just an example of Microsoft. If you look at Cisco, there is a course from Cisco on cybersecurity, which is again aligning to 2 of our competency standards in cybersecurity. So when I went through these examples on mapping, we did the similar thing with cloud. They have their course mapping to 3 of our skill sets. Adobe put the entire structure together for our foundation curriculum in UX design. So all these examples actually reinforce the fact that we are actually talking the language of industry. So if today the learner knows that, if they study the skills required when they graduate, and this is what's required for getting the placement, then we are creating that talent pool right at the beginning and they're ready for the job, right? I'll give you an example of what we did with Triple IT Bangalore and Upgrad. They have the running program in PG diploma in data science. It's a running program. They mapped it to our entire stack of big data and AI analysis family, 9 competencies. And this is a course where people are getting placed after they complete their courses. They're getting jobs. So again, it's why did Upgrad care for it? Because they also saw the value that these programs that they're running, they're actually meeting the requirements of what industry is calling out, what government is calling out, again, to bring the entire ecosystem together as one voice and one common platform. We had almost 3,700 plus enrollments on this course from Upgrad. So even in the COVID times, there was a huge enrollment for this course, which again endorses the fact that these standards are trying to create a common language where people actually see a value and they actually end up in getting placement. We just see some other examples on Jigsaw and Full Stack. I also want to share with you that we had an AI foundation course from SkillUp, where we had over 60,000 enrollments on this particular course. Our partner offered it for free on Future Skills platform. 60,000 enrollments, and I don't have a completion numbers, but I think we had over 20-25% of completion numbers also on this. On Future Skills Prime, we just launched this program in November, and on that platform, we have about 3 or 4. We have 3 foundation curriculum courses on, across IoT. We have big data and AI, and we have over 35,000 enrollments already on those courses. And again, the deep skilling, that we call them deep skilling courses, competency-based courses that I just talked to you about, on cybersecurity from Cisco, and then the courses from Microsoft, courses from Analytica, all these courses which are aligned to a competency framework, we have over 35,000 enrollments again for those courses. So we are seeing a value of these courses. Obviously, we would want to see more industry adoption. And we do have Anil here from CGI, who's going to talk to you more about how CGI is using our competency framework in their organization. So with this, I'm going to pass this on to Deepak. Can you, Deepak, help us understand, how do you guys begin this development of this competency framework, and what does industry really do in these meetings?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Divya. That was great, speaking about the competencies. I will quickly try and switch on my video if that works. Perfect. All right. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So first of all, I'd like to thank you all for this opportunity, for giving us this opportunity to present, our methodologies. And so firstly, Divya talked about a couple of things, which, the enthusiasm that we saw while developing these competency standards. What I think the methodology that goes behind this, creation of this larger competency standard is backed by large data sets. So what we do at Drop is, we track a lot of large data sets. For example, one such data set is, analyzing the employed workforce. Now, when I say, analyzing the employed workforce, we're not just doing that at a small city level, but rather, trying to understand what are the technologies that companies are hiring for, or companies are employing people in India, in United States, in China, in all the developed Western European countries, in Africa as well. What are those technologies that are emerging, right? Once we identify that, for instance, Divya and Future Skills team had already done a lot of work in defining these technologies, which were identified as AI and big data and cloud and IoT, right? So once we had that, we leveraged our professionals profile database. There's a big 750 million profiles database that we track. Also, to add to that, we also look at 75 million plus job descriptions across, which are published by global technology organizations, industrial organizations, banking organizations, and so on. So this gives us, a very broad, large data set. Now, once we started working on AI, what we wanted to understand is, what are organizations looking for any technology for that matter. The methodology was to study, millions of job descriptions, millions of professional profiles, and identify what are the competencies that, companies would really need. What are they trying to say or trying to communicate when they're posting different job descriptions, right? So we studied, in total millions of job descriptions, and our models are mature enough that help us identify what are the responsibilities of a data scientist, of a machine learning engineer, and so on and so forth, right? So our boundary condition is sort of a technology, and then our models study these technologies, the job descriptions published by different organizations. Once that is done, our consulting team comes into picture, which has large experience. There's a 100-member plus research team and the consultants at Drop, which have a lot of experience of working with NASSCOM as well. So we bring in our consultants who work with MNCs, and they brainstorm along with 40 members, sometimes 50-member big work group sessions that we have conducted over the last 2+ years for every technology. And these are super enthusiastic subject matter experts from the technology domains that we work on. And they, our work groups typically start around 9 a.m. But people are so enthusiastic. I think Divya was also mentioning that people turn up around 8:30, 8 a.m. and they're so keen on discussing these components, where the discussion ends up happening till 5 p.m., 6 p.m. in the evening. So we go through each and every component or competency of the technology, right? And these are there are multiple discussions that happen. So firstly, our machine curates the occupation standards or the smaller tasks. That is the most unique component of a job role that we talk about. So in AI, let's say assume we take out 30 or 40 tasks, we bring that to the work group, which is 40-member big or 50-member big, and we do multiple workshops around, that runs for 8 hours, 10 hours, for 4 times, 5 times. And then there'll be, parallel discussions with multiple SMEs. So that session really helps us understand what essentially are the gaps even in the job descriptions as well. So now those conducting those 3 to 4 sessions really helps us in determining the competencies. A lot of, very critical feedback comes from that. And then, we really understand, where the larger demand is. Once we identified that there are, essentially 20 to 30 critical tasks that are important for, a machine learning engineer or a data scientist, right? Then we say that, there will be, hundreds of job titles that industry would want to have in machine learning or AI big data, right? There'll be hundreds of different titles that you will see in the industry for cloud. Again, similar thing for IoT. How as an industry standard, how do we go ahead and identify those most important job roles or most important, job titles or tasks, and then go and define these competencies? That's where our data sets come in. We leverage our, 750 million plus profiles database that really helps us understand how many people are actually employed in artificial intelligence and machine learning, how many people are employed in big data technologies, how many people are employed in IoT and cloud, and so on, right? So once that is done, that is one data set that goes into helping us decide which roles we should try and create these competency standards for, right? Where we see larger employment, where we see larger demand coming in for the next 2 years, 3 years, we decide those, decide to create those qualification packs or competency standards for working with our NASSCOM partner, Future Skills partner, as well as, the work group members. So that is really, the methodology. In fact, we are not limiting ourselves in a way. If you think about it, there are multiple nonces that we create. And a lot of times the hundreds of job titles or 200, 500 job titles that you will see in the industry are combination of these nonces. So in a way, we are making sure that, any particular employee or a professional who's working at organizations like, Indian companies like HDFC or ICICI or even TCS, Infosys, right? Whatever they have to execute working in the domain of cloud or IoT or AI/ML or big data, we are making sure that we are covering those tasks, minute tasks in the competency definition by studying all the job descriptions that, all these organizations are posting. So that way we are exhaustively covering all of the various, smaller tasks, skills, tools, every aspect of the job description that a person will execute. And then finally combining, and saying that, some of these nonces combine to give us some of the popular job roles, but any organization is free to use any of these competency standards, any of the nonces, right? So that is how we are leveraging here larger data sets coming directly from Drop, our SME, feedback that are part of the Drop ecosystem, as well as, the Future Skills team has helped us work with larger work groups. I think over the last 2 years, we have worked with at least, 300 plus SMEs, working with them directly through the work groups, or having an offline, a lot of offline conversations with them, and trying to validate these tasks and creating the qualification packs that Divya was showing us a couple of minutes back. So that's the kind of effort that our larger team has been putting in. We will continue to put in these sort of efforts to create these competency standards, as well as the helping tag courses on the Future Skills Prime. So with that, I will like to pass on the platform to Saurav again. Thank you so much. And if there are any questions, we would love to take some of those questions at the end of this session. Thank you so much.
Before you go to Saurabh, so I really want to add, thank you for the detailed, explanation of how we get around and develop these standards for the beginning. I also want to call out that as part of developing these standards and this competency framework, we also do a detailed demand and supply research, right?
Absolutely, right.
And, one of the interesting things is if you look at where, we keep talking about some of these job roles that are actually probably new in India. And we always think that, AI, big data, or even blockchain, or even RPA, they don't have a lot of demand in India. But the demand and supply report that you guys have done clearly shows that, you know, there is a demand in India today across all
Absolutely.
these different job roles. Across, if you
Absolutely.
look at any of the competency any technology we have developed the standards for, there is a demand for every single job. And there is a gap in the demand and supply, and that gap is actually increasing over the CAGR of 4 years. Right?
Absolutely.
So across,
Absolutely.
and if you look at the fresh talent pool today, right? We came up with about 10% is the one that we have, about 10% talent pool today from
Right.
the.
I think, sorry to interrupt, Devi. I think it's in fact more. The gap is increasing around 12 to 13% is what our estimates are. And you rightly said, the demand for these technologies, these job roles, I've just pulled up a slide on AI and big data. You can see the demand for each of these job roles and each of the technologies is quite high, even in India, right? So we see demand, for AI ML reaching 830,000 in the coming few years, and that is quite huge, considering the employed talent will only reach around 1.2 million. So that's like 60% of the.
Yes, and what we're seeing is the freshly available talent is only 10%.
Absolutely.
So the gap is not going to be met if we do not actually start focusing on reskilling and talent development.
Absolutely.
So I think and that is the need of the hour. And we're seeing that a lot of industries are actually focusing very heavily on reskilling and skilling and these emerging technologies. So we want to bring this point to you that across these different technologies, across all these job roles, we're seeing a huge demand, and the demand is actually increasing, not decreasing. And the gap between the supply and demand is actually increasing too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is just one technology, Divya, right? If we talk about all of the 10 or, even adjacent technologies, the demand is going to be quite huge. Even if you look at just AIML, there is going to be, we are estimating close to 60% of the jobs, not even getting filled because we don't have, we are not going to be, going to have that much supply if we go at this pace. Although we are seeing, humongous focus, obviously our future skills team has done enormous amount of work. So we need all of us to get together and work to augment this supply demand gap. I think I just like to take one more moment now that you've talked about university supply. I will just take one more minute and explain, how we arrive at those numbers and say that, the supply of talent that is coming from universities is not really there. So, we studied all of the AICTE certified and deemed universities across India. We have a large, machine learning team that extracts curriculums from the, university programs, right? And our models are studying these programs to understand, whether these programs include technologies like, Python, R, and various other machine learning tools, right? And even for other technologies, what is the level of depth that the curriculums offered by the universities across different geographies in India? What is the level of competency they are offering? And out of the 2 million students that go into the education system in STEM and related fields in India, what we estimate is only 100,000 or 130,000 in the latest estimates. Those are the students that are really capable of joining into these future skills job roles, right? Which will be your data scientist or a cloud engineer or our full stack engineer, those sort of roles. Now, if you think about it, really, AIML has currently a demand of 230,000, and other technologies will, if you add these up, there'll be million plus, job roles that are just going on the platforms, and people and organizations are not able to hire for these job roles, right? So we have enormous, big time opportunity for us to focus on these university students, even the employed professionals in our GIC domain and the service providers domain, and help them bring into the high demand job roles in the future skills technologies. So I would like to take a pause here. Divya, if you have any questions, I can, we can talk about those methodologies and data sets as well.
No, this is great, Deepak. I think I think the key point I want to highlight is that there is a demand for these jobs, and the way we're creating these competency framework, if everybody starts adopting this, then we're creating one ecosystem, like I said, right? Students know if they learn these skills upfront, they are more eligible for placement. They have a head start to get hired. Industry saves time because they don't have to train these people right from the beginning. Their training cycle gets shortened. And then government, these are endorsed by government. So when you look at government incentives and the government jobs, they are talking the same language. So across, if we are creating this common ecosystem, then I think the reskilling can be really scaled. And we're already seeing that people in colleges, and some of the colleges have adopted these competency framework, and they're giving the credits against these competencies. So yeah, so I actually want to give it back to Saurabh. Saurabh, back to you.
Thanks, Divya. Thanks, Deepak, for that enlightening session. And I think having spoken all about competency standards, it's also imperative to see the use case of these competency standards. And that's where I'm going to pull in Anil to share a bit on how CGI is adopting these competency frameworks and his own experience around. So Anil, would you be able to help us spill some anecdotes on what you experienced so far with these competency frameworks?
Sure. Thank you, Saurabh. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Anil.
Yes, Anil, we can.
Yeah. Trying to turn on the video. Yeah, let me know if that works. Yeah.
That works.
Can I also have the permission to share my desktop? I have a couple of slides I can quickly walk you through.
Yes, Anand,
Let me
you can
try.
do that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So let me keep it. Yeah. Quick confirmation if you can see my slides.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So thank you for inviting me to be here and share story of CGI in the digital learning. It's very interesting to hear all the perspectives. I've been closely working with Divya from NASSCOM, Venkat and others from NASSCOM Future Skills, and had interactions with Deepak a couple of occasions. In fact, he spoke about the 9 to 5 workshop where he spoke about how people get engaged. Right? We actually did similar workshops at CGI where we invited Deepak and his team to facilitate some of those sessions for us. So I can vouch for some of things he was saying. So what I wanted to do now is quickly, maybe in 5, 6, 7 minutes, walk through from the industry perspective, like what's been our journey, our narrative of going through this at CGI APAC, some of the challenges, some approaches we took, and how it kind of created a progressive journey. So if we 15 months back, if I go back in time 15 months back to pre-COVID days, so around October, November of 2019, we already had subscribed Future Skills, and the platform was underway. We're using it for almost a year. There was this conversation about reskilling. We had a human capital strategy built in the organization, led by our business leaders. One of the key focus areas was how to reskill our workforce for the future. So we're doing a very good job with upskilling, but we want to do a focused work with reskilling our workforce for the future. So that's when we worked with Future Skills NASSCOM, and CGI also has its own proprietary platform, proprietary framework of looking at what our customers are saying. What was very interesting was the nexus. The 10 areas which Future Skills focuses on were exactly the 10 to 12 areas which CGI found as a feedback from our customers as an area to focus on. That was very interesting. So what you see on the screen here are the 10 areas we wanted to focus on, 10 technologies and 2 areas of process, Agile and DevOps. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, apologies for that. That was my son trying to show me his latest Lego thing he's doing. So he's trying to knock my door. So back to the story. So it was, what we found was the areas we wanted to focus was very same. It was a good synergy. Then we put together the plan, working with NASSCOM team and Future Skills team to say, hey, what if we created a foundational course for the whole organization, irrespective of you might be a director, somebody tenured in technology, or some graduate straight out of college. Let's create an equal program for everyone. That was the birth of this program called Digital 101 Awareness. where we curated content from Future Skills and also some content from other platforms we have. And this is what Divya was mentioning when she said when she said they also have foundational courses. They call it the primer courses. Like you can have an AI primer course, ML primer course, BDA, so on and so forth. So we kind of curated all this content and offered this 40 hours learning program as not mandated, but as a highly recommended course. The only thing we said was, we're not mandating it, but if you do this certification program, you will, this is a prerequisite for deep skilling in any of those 10 areas we discussed. One very interesting thing was we launched it across APAC. We did a pilot with the BU. It became very successful, and exactly a year back, in the month of April, in the COVID, we launched it to entire APAC, and I'll show results in a minute. What was very interesting was since we did all the hard work, I went to the corporate leaders also, the HR leader, finance leader, legal, and said, hey, we're doing this program for the business, the operations side, but I think this is equally important to you. Would you want your teams to go through? And surprisingly, all of them said yes. So we actually created an abridged version of same Digital 101 for corporate services or support units, as we call, a shorter version of how to use these technologies in their own, like how to use chatbots in HR, how to use chatbots in finance, so on and so forth. It was very interesting that everyone adopted. So long story short, fast forward 12 months or more, 36% of our workforce, which is over 5,000 members in India, are certified in this digital foundation program. Feedback at all levels, this being a completely virtual program, over 4 in every category, 4.1, and learning outcomes, expectations, navigate technology ease, learning useful and worthwhile investment. And we also did significant ROI study, which I didn't, which we still don't have permission to share here, but very significant ROI impact, both in terms of employee engagement. One factor I can tell you is last year, learning of the total learning hours of our members went up by 40%. And I think most credit should go to this program compared to earlier years. And net promoter score for this program is 45 out of 100. So any net promoter score over 20-25 is supposed to be very strong score. So that's just the story of how we started. So for organizations out there who would like to start on this journey, you saw the framework, you saw the story from Deepak. I think organically you need to build by doing the equivalent to this, a digital foundations kind of a program. So everybody's up to mark, and then you start do deep skilling. So that would be my recommendation. Then an example of how we are doing this, after the Digital 101 program is over, one of those 10 tracks being, let's say, for example, DevOps, which is the case. Now here is how we do deep skilling for DevOps. DevOps 101, DevOps, which is beginners, and which is already covered. The first one is already covered in Digital 101. Then we have DevOps practitioner and then DevOps expert. So that's how you kind of build deep skilling. And this is where, again, a tip from my side, working with Future Skills is most of learning providers are getting their content verified and accredited by the NOS sheets or the NOS, competency framework. So it's easy from my perspective as a learning leader, and for my organization, it's easy to narrow down to which learning vendor to work with. We've started with those who are already certified and then work with them to see which content is better, so on and so forth. It's also helping us accelerate the go-to-market from a training perspective. So that's another tip. And quickly, so where we are is, we'll continue the Digital 101 program for it's an ongoing program. Whenever new hire joins, it's given to them. They're to complete in 6 months. So there's an ongoing focus on that. We're building digital skilling tracks out of those 10 in 5. Cloud being one, RPA, automation, DevOps, so on and so forth. And then what's interesting, it's very organic thing. So first, after we did Digital 101, and this is how it organically grows in the organization. So then people are asking for something like this. Say, hi, my members are ready with foundation. Now give them some deep skilling. So we give a deep skilling roadmap like this. That's the next logical thing we did. But as we started training, doing pilots in AI, ML, BDA, DevOps, cloud, so on and so forth, naturally the other questions started coming up saying, for example, we did a pilot in one part of our business where we took a lot of Java programmers and then train them on AI/ML to kind of move them on to AI/ML kind of role. So naturally, if the questions from the structure perspective was, how would their role look like after the training when they get deployed? Would they be paid the same? What are their career path options? So these questions naturally started coming. So we did the foundational training, we did something like a basic, intermediate, advanced track as a next progression. But then people started asking and we started exploring career paths, which was getting really critical. So now we're in a stage where there are 7 COPs, communities of practice, at CGI APAC, where we are actually working to build career paths because we moved beyond the foundational training. We already have basic, intermediate, advanced tracks for most of them. Now what we're trying to do is create a full career map, career paths. And that's where the competency framework and NOS sheets from NASSCOM have been extremely useful. In fact, I would go out and say, I'll put this slide on. So this is how we adapted it's a occupational map of cloud computing as proposed by NASSCOM and adopted for CGI perspective. This is a very high level. I'll talk about the differences of how we adapted. But what I can say straight away is I spent almost 6 to 8 weeks with our SMEs working on this. If we didn't have the NOS sheets from NASSCOM and I had to do this activity, it would have taken me at least 3 months more, 3 to 4 months more. I think easily 60 to 70% of my time got saved because we had a reference to start with, we had a benchmark to start with. So for example, what you're seeing here, in the original cloud computing NOS sheets, there are 6 families. From a CGI perspective, we combined 6 into 4. It was easy to start from there rather than starting from scratch. And therefore, there were those tracks from those families also combined into those tracks. And we kind of combined some roles too. But it was so easy to arrive at this with our SMEs and our leaders rather than starting from scratch. And it's been a very easy, intuitive, very modular, very flexible, almost plug and play kind of an approach. And as we speak, where we are is we kind of did this for cloud. And as we speak, our SMEs are actually doubling down on each of these job roles to say, what is equivalent to a cloud infrastructure analyst at CGI? What are the multiple variants of the role with CSP, without CSP? Like what if it had a Azure or a Amazon, AWS, or a Google flavor to it? So those are the conversations we're having. But based on the detailed architecture already built through the NOS sheets, this is a very, very easy activity. So what we're doing from a change management perspective is doing this for one COP of cloud because it's also comprehensive and it's also an important need for us, and then immediately scale it to all other various communities of practice. So I can, as a practitioner, I can say, I don't know cloud in detail. I cannot talk beyond certain point about cloud technologies. But with this framework, I've actually facilitated a couple of workshops with our internal SMEs and leaders, and that's how handy and easy this framework can be. And it's also, reviewed by our senior leaders, and they really, and another comment I would like to make is, a framework like this, it's one of its kind in India, but I think outside India also, we being a global organization, we have employees all over the globe, SMEs all over the globe. There are not many places in the world where they have a framework like this in place. So it's very unique, very deployable, and very flexible and modular and easy. And easily it will help you 50 to 60% of your time if you do without it. And again, as I mentioned, the last thing I would like to say as a practitioner is, but you need to go through the change management. You need to go through the whole rigor. So what worked for us was to start with the digital foundations program, bring everyone up to speed, then do basic practitioner and advanced courses for all those 10. So people started doing, and then naturally the conversation said, hey, that's fine, but what about actual career maps, actual career paths? And that's when this came in. So depending on where you are as an organization, but that's an actual progression we have taken. And as a practitioner, I think that's the right thing to do, to go step by step. And for us, it's been 18-month journey so far. So that's a quick story I wanted to share. Saurabh and Divya, back to you.
Thank you so much, Anil. This is a great example of how organizations are actually using this framework. That's the first question. I mean, I get asked every single webinar, every single presentation I have gone and done, the first question is always, how are organizations using this, right? So we shared the examples with you about, how different organizations are working with their colleges about, taking the foundation curriculums, using this internally for reskilling their employees. And then Anil, from you, we just heard how CG is actually looking at the occupational map and the whole framework we have on cloud, and how you guys are actually completely utilizing the whole concept of flexible, modular, and stackable and using it for your purpose. So, just one comment I want before I pass it on to Saurabh for questions is, so you mentioned international. So we are actually working with some couple of other countries where they have actually studied a framework. They are working with us and seeing how they can adopt this in their own organizations in different countries. The second thing is, these standards are available. These are government approved standards that are available for anybody to use. They're not IP protected or anything. So if you guys want, anybody wants any information, they are free to be used. We'll be happy to help you guide how you can use them. If you're already using them any capacity, please share with us how they have helped you, any testimonials, any kind of use cases you want to share with us. We would love to hear those. And if we can help out in seeing how your organization can leverage them, please do reach out to us. So thank you, Anil. Back to you, Saurabh.
Thanks, Divya. Thanks, Anil, for the informative session. I got a bunch of questions for Deepak and Anil and Divya. We'll have to see whether we have time to cover all of them or not. But let's start with Deepak. So Deepak, my question to you is that one of the problems that the technology industry particularly has been grappling with is the problem of loss in productivity because of wrong hires. It's been happening for close to 3 decades now. Right. Now, do you think that there is a possibility that the competency standards in some way or the other can help companies bring forth a surge in their per capita productivity by virtue of hiring the right people, writing the right job descriptions, hiring for the right skills? Do you think something like that can happen?
Right, absolutely. That's a really great question. Can you hear me, Saurabh?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So, I would like to quote a study that we were running for a global MNC about 4 or 5 months back, or even 6 months back, 6 months into the COVID scenario, where, we wanted to study what is the impact of COVID on productivity. And then it further got extended into analyzing, the other angles of productivity, how it is when it's about a new hire versus versus reskilling somebody who's internal to an organization, right? So firstly, there are a lot of things that we are doing from identifying the right competencies. Once we have said that, these are XYZ competencies that you need for any job role, that makes it really easy for the recruiter to identify the right talent pool. And from various studies, what we have seen is there is around, 20% to 36% of productivity loss incurred by the organizations if you're going about hiring the very wrong people, or hiring people who do not have those adjacent or very relevant competencies. The second component I would like to use and talk about is something that as an industry we typically ignore a lot of times when we are going for, if there is, for example, a demand for a cloud engineer or cloud capabilities in an organization, we typically go out and say that let's go ahead and hire, right? But from our study, what we understood after interviewing 200 plus stakeholders across global organizations is that a lot of components such as understanding of internal data structure, understanding of internal stakeholders, understanding what is the culture of the organization or the team that you're working in, these are all attributes that an internal employee already knows, right? Only the gap is around the competencies that we are hiring for. So it really becomes super easy, or in a longer run, organizations typically will get more productivity out of employees where they are training employees from adjacent roles into these future skills or high demand job roles. For instance, a developer or a SAP Salesforce developer, and trying to mold them into a full stack developer or a data scientist, that will become more productive rather than always going out and seeking for newer hires from outside. Obviously, we are not saying that not very important, but a combination of hiring plus reskilling initiative internal to an organization is really the model in which organizations have to look at it, right? And from the perspective of productivity loss, what we estimate is around 24 to 36% of productivity loss happens really around, especially around two areas. Firstly, not identifying the right people with right competencies, and secondly, ignoring people who have these similar competencies or adjacent competencies internal to an organization, which can be or who can be moved into these very high demand job roles. So we are talking organizations who have even if you look at the audience also, a lot of organizations here will have 20,000 40,000 employees. So it really is super important, like Anil was saying, to look at internal employees and what kind of capabilities that have, and who are the ones which we can leverage around different high demand future skills job roles.
Thanks, Deepak. Thanks for that informative answer. Now that you've spoken about the industry, let's go back to Anil. And Anil, I'd like to know a little bit that if a company like CGI adopt these competency standards, do you think it'll help them to optimize their recruitment, training, and development costs? Because the training and development costs and recruitment costs in total is a large part of the OPEX for any company year on year, right? So do you think that these competency standards will help streamline that and optimize their recruitment, training, and development costs, thereby having an impact on the bottom line?
Saurabh, thank you. I think that's a brilliant question. I think Deepak kind of alluded to the answer. I would say we need any organization, even in a post-COVID world, talent mobility has become really critical, both from two perspectives: employee engagement perspective, secondly, three perspectives: employee engagement, therefore employee progression, but also more from a reskilling, future skilling perspective. So, like for example, if you look at typically IT companies like ours, where a significant majority of our workforce are doing variety of work in Java full stack or .NET full stack or testing, and not all of them are really full stack ready, right? So there's a nice progression you could do. Take somebody who has a couple of years of experience in Java, core Java, and then put them on a full stack journey, and then let's say in 12 months or 18 months, make them a full stack developer in Java. We can do like that. Similarly, like that for .NET, so on and so forth. And that simple approach helps in different ways. One is it engages the talent because they know they see a career progression. It's a very important need for talent in India. When you look at millennials, and a lot of research data around that, even research from leading bodies like Gartner and CB, learning opportunities and career progression are top, apart from compensation, top needs younger workforce already has. So it kind of helps us engage that way. It also helps from an organization perspective to match the supply demand, because taking a tenured workforce is already understands the culture and have done projects at CGI in core Java kind of perspective, and wrapping them up to become a full stack is easier, less risky. And if you think it really well, you spoke about productivity loss and other things, Deepak spoke about it. If you plan this really well and start the journey ahead, it's a nice a progressive move we could make, compared to vis-a-vis going out and keep on hiring people in DevOps specialization, Java full stack, so on and so forth. I just took example of that one specific skill, but I think that to answer your question, definitely yes. That's the right way, because anyway, even from a larger reskilling perspective, we could be a couple of years away from it. But even if you look at the recent data from World Economic Forum, what we're hearing from our clients, a lot of research Deepak and their team are doing, eventually beyond a point, some of these roles are going to kick in and other roles are anyway going to die down, right? So it's important to start on the journey, not just from a short-term view, but from a long-term perspective. So I would definitely say yes, upskilling, reskilling workforce, planning ahead of time, and having a multi-year agenda is the right way to go about doing it.
Thanks, Anil. Last but not the least, I got one question for Divya. So Divya, you spoke about the competency standards and the semantics around it. So my question is, like, in the near future, do you see these competency standards revamp our education system, infusing more skill-based training?
I Really do. If you look at the new policy that we have, education policy, right? It talks about how they are going to be promoting over the years a skill based, right? You don't have to follow a specific degree. Now you can actually go through the programs based on the degree skills you want to be, right? So if you look at today, so let's say if you want to be a data scientist, right? Not every organization may have a degree to offer you in data scientist, but there are diploma programs out there. And if those programs result in employment, right? The important part is always going to be employment. If they result in employment, then yes, this will definitely help in all the skill-based training and, hiring. Today, I mean, why are people going and consuming these courses from Jigsaw and upgrads? They're going to colleges, they have college degrees, but there are a lot of people still investing in these programs outside the degree program. Simple reason is because that's what's giving them employability. If we can actually institute these standards at the college level, where the students also know that if they go through this curriculum, go through these learnings, then they have higher chances of being employable, then I think the story that we're talking about, one ecosystem and creating the talent that's consumable, I think it will create that story for us. So I totally believe that if industry is coming forward and saying that this is what's needed, and if we see more and more adoption, we will see increase in a talent pool, and it will help us get to the vision that we have.
So, Divya, if it helps, I'll quickly add one perspective from my side. Just to add to what Divya mentioned, at CGI, we're actually working closely with Future Skills and NASSCOM to actually take some of these courses to the campuses where we go and hire graduates. In fact, take it to them earlier in the curriculum, like 5th or 6th semester, and ramp them up on these skills even before we go in 6th and 7th semester to hire them. So exactly for the reasons that we spoke about. So I think it's for everybody's benefit, and it's not just we want to help increase the future skills talent for all of the workforce, and we'll also benefit because we could anyway hire from the talent pool. So from an industry perspective, I would vouch for what Divya is saying. Yeah.
Thanks, Anil.
Thanks, Anil. Thanks, Divya. I think that's all the time we have for session. So I'd like to thank all our speakers for taking our time for this session. I'd like to thank all our audience for taking your time and running the session. And I'm going to reiterate a little bit what Divya said, that if you want to know more about these competency standards and you feel that you can use them in your respective organizations, do get in touch with us. And I think with this, thank you all for attending. Goodbye and stay safe. Take care.
Thank you,
Saurav. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.